Hey, and welcome to Fabric Fodder Session 7. Feels like it's been so many more than that, but I guess it hasn't. But anyway, they'll start being able to move a little bit quicker coming up here pretty soon. Once we get some of these more basic stuff out of the way. Today, we are creating our own stamps to stamp on fabric. Last time it was using commercial stamps. This time we're making our own out of polymer erasers and fun foam. You can also use all sorts of other around the house type of found objects to do stamps with. And maybe we'll do a session further down the road doing that sort of thing. But these two methods, using the polymer erasers and the fun foam, are my favorite methods for making my own stamps. And I'm excited to get started on a project that I'll be showing you as well, using some of these techniques that we've started off with. I've had kind of a rough week, not feeling well this week, so I haven't got any extras done, but I'm hoping in this coming week to get some extra sessions going. And once we have the stenciling set done, which I'm planning for next Friday, then we could start moving into combining things and showing you some much more interesting ways of using, excuse me, some of these things, these ideas and techniques in combination as I start to go in more depth of different ways that you can embellish and manipulate fabrics. So I'm really looking forward to all of that. So enjoy the session today, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks a bunch. All right, so we're going to be working on stamps this session that we create ourselves. I have two main ways that of making stamps myself, using fun foam, which comes in it's like a 1/16 of an inch thick. There's also thicker stuff. You can use that as well. This is just super easy to cut with either scissors or a craft knife. And then I like applying this to some sort of substrate. And my favorite is using a piece of acrylic. Now this has a cover on it just to protect the acrylic, but this is just thin. It's like light chipboard weight acrylic. And I like using this just because you can see through it from both sides, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. Another substrate that I have used is some rigid insulation foam that you can get at the hardware stores. I've used this on some of my 3D scrapbooking projects in the past where we've cut it and then I've carved it to make, like we made on one of the fairy houses, we made our fireplace out of this. So you buy this in a sheet, and then I just cut it down. I use my craft knife to cut it, and then I just break it for the rest. But this works really well as a substrate. I've also tried it carving this, and this is a little bit harder to carve to create stamps. And I may talk about this a little bit more down the road when I'm going over block printing. This is just making some fun and easy stamps today. The other method that I uses little these polymer erasers, and these are really easy to carve with just a craft knife. So I have one here that's a leaf. I have a person here, and I'll talk about that here in a sec. And then I have this is a 3-yard piece of canvas. It's 60 inches wide. This took days to make. I did this back when I was in college again. I don't know quite what I was thinking with turquoise with emerald green, because turquoise has always been a favorite, but the emerald green, I don't quite remember my thinking on this, but regardless, I did this. This was like probably 1985 maybe, and this was actually done with dye. So these stamps you don't have to use with paint, they can be done with dye. And when we get to where I'm talking about thickened dyes and that sort of thing, we'll talk a little bit more about using stamps for doing that. But So you can create yardage using just little, and this was a stamp exactly like this. It was maybe a little bit shorter, but I just sat there and stamped. I just remember doing it for days upon days upon days. But so let me show you in terms of working with some of these stamps. So with the polymer stamps, and you can find these erasers, you can also get the rubber ones. They're just a little harder to cut with a craft knife. So what I've done is I've just traced with a pen what shape I want. So I just want this little person shape. And then I just cut around it down in about 1/8 of an inch or so. And then I just trim the excess away. It doesn't have to be pretty in the background because that part's not going to stamp. So, and then we're just going to either roller or with a foam brush paint some paint on it and stamp it. So these are pretty simple to do. They're easy to do while you're sitting there watching TV, but probably at a table. Just be careful with your craft knife, that sort of thing. The even easier to make are the stamps with the foam, because you can cut those out with scissors, so it's real easy to do. So the craft foam, I get the craft foam when I'm doing these that has the sticky backing on it, so I don't have to use any other adhesives. And I need to grab my scissors. Sorry, I had the wrong one sitting here. So I just draw out whatever shape that I want. And then I just, with my scissors, you just cut it out. It's that simple. He has a little bit more hair than I wanted him to. So that's quick and easy. Now I've taken the protective coating off of the piece of acrylic, and then I'm just sticking him on in the center. For some reason, I don't know why, but I like to round my corners on my acrylic or trim away excess. But there's now a quick and easy acrylic stamp versus the little carved stamp. So let me show you a couple of examples of what I've done, and then from there we'll I'll demonstrate. So I haven't been feeling well this week, part of the reason why I haven't had extra videos. So I went ahead and did a lot of the stamping in advance to show you what it looks like. So this stamp, as I said, was a carved one on the polymer, and that's a little leaf. And then I stamped it on this piece, and I just stamp, and then I turned it around and did this row and this row. Now the thing with these are much like other kinds of rubber stamps, especially if they're on a block or you don't have where the edges are. It's harder to kind of see, so you're doing a little bit of guesswork when you're actually sticking it down to make sure that it's in the place that you want. But I kind of like the kind of folklorish, almost folksy look, kind of, the word just is escaping me, but just a little bit more rustic look to it. So, so this is a fun piece of fabric fodder then to have. Here's one where I've taken the foam and I'm using the substrate of the closed-cell foam that the insulation that you can get at the hardware store. And with this one, I just stamped in sections, and then I can use it as is, or I can cut strips out of it, that sort of thing. But with this one, I just took a rectangle and cut these swervy things out of it, and then made also these little extra little dot things because it adds some texture overall to the piece. With this one, I kind of made it almost like some little kind of flower type things, using some little skinny pieces as well. And then
stamping, now I've got those little corners everywhere, and then stamping it onto my fabric. And it kind of makes a fun pattern. I could also see doing it where then if you're doing it in 4, you turn 90 degrees each time, and that would also create a fun pattern as well. Here's another one with the foam substrate on it, and this looks kind of like this is the stamp, whereas in reality that's the stamp. And again, can't really see, but it kind of adds to that more hand created type of feeling to it. Excuse me. Then this one, I just cut a swirl out, and then I just did kind of a notch thing around the outside. Now, one of the reasons why I really like using these, the foam mounted onto the piece of acrylic, is if one of these were not as, didn't stamp as well, you can line up on top of them and stamp over it. And we're going to do that real quick just to show you that. So I'm just on a piece of acrylic and a roller. I'm just creating just to roll it out so I can get a nice even coat on here. So I'm just using some of this hot pink, and I'm not completely covering this because I'm going to go over one of the pink ones on here. And so what I can do now is line that up almost perfectly and double stamp it. And so I've added that hot pink. I could do that again. So rather than just a single layer, but by being able to see where you're placing it versus these where you can't see, it's kind of a fun thing to be able to do. Let's go ahead and do all 4 of these. Makes for a fun little, I don't know how much of the fluorescent orange got on this one. A little bit. Let me just add a dab more to my palette. It dries out pretty quick, especially when I'm talking. Let's do that one again since I didn't get much. There, much better. And I can line it up, pop it down, rub it on. And then it went from cool, but now it's got some pizzazz by adding that not so complete coverage over it. So makes for a fun little motif. And this is something you could do over much larger pieces of fabric. So that's a fun one to do. Okay, another one that I've done is this has got 2 layers that are offset. So I started out with a blue and then overlaid it with an aqua. And this is the stamp that I used, and it's concentric circles. And what I have done is this one's related to it in that this part and this part are actually this and this. Excuse me. I just cut those in half. But with this kind of concentric circles, I did the blue one all over, and then I went back and did the aqua. And I personally love how this one came out. I think it's just a lot of fun. It kind of has a real 60s mod kind of look to it. So I'm looking forward to using this one. This one will be a lot of fun. So then I also, so let's do a little bit of stamping here. I have this fun one, which is kind of square-ish circles in a concentric pattern. Now with this one, I wanted it to get a little bit of lift for when I start stamping it. Just because it had these little skinny pieces on there. I don't know why. I just felt, let's try this. So this has got 2 layers of foam. The bottom layer is whole, whereas the top layer with the gray has the grooves on it. And I just thought, might make it a little bit more stable. I don't know whether it did or not. This was just kind of a experimental thing to try. So let's go ahead and stamp a little bit with this one. So let me move this where you can see. So I've just got a piece of acrylic. You can also use maybe a little just dash of my fabric medium, just because this is a heavy heavy body acrylic that I'm using. And I like using the rollers. You can also do like with a sponge brush to put this on. And you can also use your gel plate as a palette to put this on. So it's just up to you as to which one you want to do. Okay, so place this on there. And this is a fun, doing like a quarter section is a fun thing to do, because then, so I can turn this and do this. You know, I can just keep turning as to what direction I want it to be. A bit more. It uses up a lot more paint than you think it's going to. I always do too little, and then wish I'd done a little bit more. But what, again, I love with these acrylic ones with the foam on them, in that I can, because this one's going to come out darker than this one, so I can over top of it do it. Well, it's not too bad. It's about similar, so I don't have to. So then maybe I do this one this way. So you can form patterns with some of these, whether it's quarter circle, quarter rounded square. So you can kind of play with creating patterns. And just like I did with this one, if I wanted to go over this with a different color in kind of that splotchety type of method, I can. So it gives you, with these kind of clear backed foam stamps, it kind of gives you a little more options than with the solid back onto it. Should have gone for a little bit bigger piece of fabric, but this one was handy, so let's do until this paint runs out. We'll do a couple more here. I'm probably off camera, so I'll do that. I keep finding myself going, oh, good grief, you weren't even close to being on camera. What are you thinking here? You'd think after 15 years of doing this, I would remember where the camera field is. All right, so that gives us a few, so you can get the idea of what's going on with that one. So that one's fun, that you can do kind of a big all over pattern or do a smaller piece like this is, but very versatile, easy to use type of stamp to create kind of a fun pattern that, again, we can choose to overstamp with another color if we so choose. This one's a little tougher to line up because I have that blue in the background that kind of covers over it versus the one like this. But you could also, this would be also one that with every so often I could see putting on an overstamp with this one over the top of this pattern. So you can kind of play with them and do all sorts of things with them if you want to. So that's fun. All right, so for this next one, which is the one that I made these little people for, as well as another stamp that's got 3 people on. So I wanted to make a row of people because what I'm going to use it on is, this is one of the very, very first bags I made. So this is probably from like 1991. And the other reason I can figure that out is I remember making it and I'm remembering where I lived. And I apologize for the dog barking in the background. And so from where I was living at the time, I've deduced it must have been 1991. So this is just a little pouch with a drawstring top on it. So, but what I want to do is make this band with these people going around it. So I have a piece of my hand-dyed fabric from a million years ago, and I'm going to spread these out. And these I probably will do in a different color with these stamps. And then I have this stamp that I've created that I thought I could go along the bottom. And that's probably off camera, and it was. I can go along the bottom to create kind of a ground line, and then having the people all lined up. So let me keep this in camera range. All right, so let's first do this ground line. And I pulled a color that I'm going to do the people out of, but I didn't pull the ground lines. Let me grab that. Let's just use some buff. And I've just taken and spraying a little of my fabric medium, that's watered down fabric medium. And kind of work that in a little. And that I will apply to my ground stamp. On camera there. And this is going to be real kind of neutral, which is kind of the way I wanted it to be. Goes over the bottom a little bit. And then I probably will go ahead and use this same stamp to do an all over stamp for the fabric I'm going to use for this drawstring part. I mean, this is really subtle on this dark gray fabric using this buff color, but that's the way I wanted it to be. So I know it's not as effective as a sample that I'm showing, but it does work for what the project is going to be. So, all right, so I've got that going along the bottom. So now I'm going to take and do some of my people. and by having, you know, little groups of them. So let me go ahead and clean this off. All right, so now I've got a raw umber, which is a kind of olivey kind of dark brown, and I'm going to use that for the majority of the people, but the ones done with this stamp I'm going to do out of a different color. And so I'll just kind of have these randomly. They kind of have a shadow look to them. And by having this single individual that's separate, I can then vary the spacing of where he lands. Then I'm thinking I have one here and one here, so I'm going to put that, lay that there so I have some spacing for him. And again, I'm just rollering the ink on this little hill. Now, I have some lumps and bumps right there on my canvas, so it gave some cool texture. So maybe I'll do one more batch of them. Scooch it down a little bit. See where those bumps are so I don't run into them again. These guys are going to go a little lower down here. And then do this guy. And then I can also, when I make this, during the quilting process, I can stitch around these guys and give them some stitching too. Now, what I'm thinking now that I might do is this individuals, I think I might give them a little pop. I'm going to just throw a little weird onto it. I might not like it. See what it mixes. Since I had that fluorescent orange out, just mix that in a little bit. So we've got that little bit of orange. Let's see how that looks. Where I can layer on top, just like we did with that fluorescent orange on top of the pink. Gives them just a little bit of a different color, not dramatic. So those have just, it's subtle. I don't know if you can see that. It's a subtle color difference. Okay, so now we're ready to do these guys in a completely different color. All right, so now with this little carved stamp, I've mixed up a purple. Now sometimes with these, it almost works better to take my acrylic pad and stamp them on there. You get kind of a cool texture too. So let's do this guy here. So we get that. I'm going to do him right next to it. Maybe one last one down close at this end. Okay. So that gives me a row of the people going around, and this is going to be a band that goes around the outside here, kind of like where these guys are. And the fabric here on this top, I'm going to take the stamp, this one, and just kind of do an all over pattern with that. So and I'll be showing that bag as it completes once I get that done. I'm looking at this now and thinking that I may want to, with these guys, do this similar effect of what I did with that to add. But then again, I kind of like the texture that's on them right now. And I have a really bad habit of going, I love it, and then go, but what if I, and what if I works really good sometimes, but there are times where I kind of go, I shouldn't have done that. And I really like it right now. And I think I can add some stuff in terms of color, but what I stitch around it. So rather than keep adding paint to it, I think I'm going to stop right where I am and do some stitching with that. So stay tuned. Hopefully over the next few days, as I'm feeling better, I'll be able to work on this and get it done and ready to show. But anyway, you saw me stamping with the clear acrylic, the rubber stamp, the rubber or the polymer eraser stamp, and this foam stamp on a thicker substrate. So you can see how all three of those worked, as well as if you're doing a single stamp and you're layering it with this one, a stamp that you turn and rotate, a stamp that is a smaller stamp, but you can create all over, another polymer with the leaves where you can either use this as an individual stamp or you can create a pattern all over. This one where we added some additional color, a hot pop of color that just transform that into a cooler one. And I'm thinking that I might do the same thing with this stamp, to where maybe I just paint it on these parts, so then these parts get a pop of maybe a hot yellow or maybe a turquoise or something. So I'll try that. And then this one is where I've taken this pieces that I took out for this one and turned them into a completely different but related stamp and did an all over pattern. So doing these foam stamps or the carved polymer eraser stamps are super fun, super easy. You can also do things just using things from around your house. For instance, some of these Goldens, they have this kind of cool cap, and you can actually use that cap. Let's see if I can get any paint on it still, or if this is dried. But you can take something like that and stamp with it. If it was, my paint was starting to dry, otherwise that would work out really well. But you can use just stuff that's around your house, whether it's jars or there's there's people who buy crystal type or cut type crystal-y looking things at thrift stores and stuff, and you can print with that. That's a whole nother segment that I may do. Potatoes. I keep hitting my phone and it turns. You can make potato prints or vegetable prints. You can stamp with pretty much everything, but I mainly just wanted to show you how fun and quick and easy it is to create stamps out of the fun foam that you can get at any of the big box craft stores. Again, I like it with the sticky back on it, but you can get it and just glue it in place. And again, using a substrate that's quick and easy and lightweight, that you can just get. It's rigid insulation you can get at the hardware store. The acrylic on some of these is just, you can get that also Amazon or places like that. And the beauty is you can see through it to line up to do other things. So anyway, fun to create your own stamps and make projects using your own stamps. So let your imagination run wild and just have a blast and have fun. Thanks a bunch.